everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Roxann Klepper, and this is Brick by Brick. If you tuned in last week, we did an in-depth dive into the condominium market. It's great information because everyone has their opinion of a condo, but unless you've sat on a board or bought and sold a few, there's so much to know. So today on the show, we have Carissa Notland with us. Carissa started her company Condolyzers in 2011. They are experts in the field of condominium affairs, with more than a decade of industry experience in multiple facets of condominiums. So their impressive collection of training, knowledge, and experience offers clients quality, value, and confidence. So Carissa is here to answer everything's condos. Welcome to the show, Carissa.
Hey, Roxann. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it. Nice to be
Yeah,
here.
I'm glad we could get together for sure and chat about some condos because, like we were talking about earlier, the condo market has gotten very busy this year.
Yes, the last 2 years have been
Yeah,
quite busy. This year was definitely no exception.
for
So,
sure.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
thanks for having me on. I'm
yeah,
here and ready to answer whatever you need. This is what we do.
beautiful.
Condos are our specialty.
Perfect. Well, let's dive into it. I thought we'd start off by letting people know about your background and kind of what makes you qualified to read condo docs for condo purchasers.
Yeah, good, good question. So, with condo document reviews, when I first, like you said, 2011, that's when I started the company. And when I was kind of researching my competition at the time, I was like, okay, hey, who's out there who's doing this? And what are their qualifications? What have they been doing? So I kind of looked around a little bit and I felt, yeah, I am definitely more than qualified to do this 100%. So I had about 10 years background as a professional condominium manager. I worked for a fairly renowned, actually, you had mentioned Central Property Management.
Yes.
That's one of the management companies that I had experience with.
Okay.
Um, and so, yeah, I worked with some pretty renowned property management companies, like I said, close to 10 years, doing all my training and experience and everything. And the team that I had going, so myself and the assistants that I had working for me, we seemed to get all the fun condos. So the ones that were unique and different, right?
Yeah.
So we had ones with like titled stairwells and recreation condo properties and just stuff like different and unique, not just all your
Okay.
run of the mill apartment style or all townhouse, that sort of thing. We seem to get a good collection of things. And so we had to really become diverse and get to know condos, not just from the traditional perspective, but from the really unique perspectives
Yeah.
as well. So that was a lot of fun. But, anyways, yeah, so I took all of my training, education, knowledge, and whatnot, and I saw a hole in Red Deer and Central Alberta at that time. Edmonton and Calgary all had this sort of a service, like document
Yeah.
reviews. But Red Deer didn't have anything like this. And so people were kind of left wondering, where do I go? Not all the lawyers wanted to touch this.
Yeah.
And so then they were left going out of our kind of community, and people love to be able to support local. And so it's
Yeah.
kind of like, I've got the experience, I've got the knowledge, I've got something that we can offer here, and it fills the hole for Central Alberta. So I best get on this and lickety split, get going. So
Very
that's how
cool.
business kind of came to be. Thank you. And
Yeah.
so, and it's just been growing, growing, growing ever since. So it's
Well,
been
it's like you said, there was a huge gap, and I don't
great.
know how, some of those people would have understood what they were getting into without an in-depth analysis of those documents.
Yeah, for sure, for
So super
sure.
important. And
Yeah.
so, okay, so let's say that someone's buying a condo. They ask you to help them with their document review. Can you tell us what that process looks like? Like, what do you do for them and how does it go?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So the process is so from a legal perspective. So first of all, the government of Alberta says if you're buying a condo, the seller has to turn over a set of documents from the condo association to whoever's buying. So if you're the buyer, then you and your real estate agent, such as yourself, of course, Roxann, then you guys are talking to the seller saying, hey, we need the condo docs. And the law is very clear on the list of what needs to be provided. You have to get your bylaws and your financials and the insurance and minutes and this thing and that thing and the other thing. So you get a big bundle. And back in the days when it was paper copy, It'd literally be like this thick. It
Oh,
was crazy. You
I
get
do
like,
not miss the paper copy days.
oh, I so don't miss the paper copy.
No.
Oh, electronic is wonderful. So
Oh,
now we
yes.
get all the electronic documents. We go through them with a fine tooth comb. And so our goal is to pull out any nuggets of information that we feel a buyer is going to want to know in order to aid them in making a decision. Is this the place for me to buy, or is it not the place for me to buy? So if we see something good that we feel might influence their decision, yeah, I'm going to pull that out, or one of my team members is going to pull that out of the documents. We're going to make note of that in our comments and findings for you. And just like I noted that you use my same little famous phrase as well, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So
Yeah.
that's totally what we do for customers is we pull out the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so the next thing is, yeah, if we see something bad, we're going to pull out that nugget of
Yeah.
information. We're going to make note of it and bring it to your attention. And same thing if we see something really ugly, well, for sure, the buyer is going to want to know that information as well. So we put all these comments and findings into a really easy to read report style format, not legal jargon. We're talking everyday people, you and me, just, common language. We lay it all out, hand it over to them, email, and then they go through it at a pace that they feel comfortable with. Go through it 2 or 3 times if you like. Mark down any questions, and then we do a phone call afterwards to answer
Right.
any questions. And I can guarantee at the end of the process, every single one of our customers has felt prepared to make a decision one way or the other. They're either moving forward with the place or they know it's not the right buy for them. At the end of the day, they feel confident in their decision because they have all the facts, and that's the goal.
Yeah. Very nice. And I do think that it's such a huge part of it. Like I said in my last episode, people think that a condo is a style of building when really it's more a form of ownership than anything. You are buying into an ownership piece of a building. And so having all those
Yeah,
facts, crucial.
yeah, very,
Yeah.
very crucial. 100%.
And so when you're working with people or not working with people, what do you find the biggest mistakes are that people make when purchasing a condo, whether it has to do with condo docs or, just getting into a building that maybe has problems? What are the things that you see that people don't do?
Yeah, I guess, like really, I think the biggest thing that I see is misconceptions about
Okay.
condos, just not understanding truly what the condo is and what the relationship between an owner in a condo and the actual association, what that's supposed
Okay.
to look like. And
Okay.
so you did a great job. I listened to the podcast that you recorded from last week or the last one there, where you kind of just started to talk about some of the foundation and the basics about condos. What the heck is a unit factor and what's kind of just the general concept of it. And so when I'm talking to my clients, yeah, I quite often relate condos to a business. So essentially, you're coming along and you're buying into a business because, like,
Yeah.
when you think about it, the name Condo Corporation, it has the name corporation in it.
Yeah.
Corporation means business, right? So that's exactly what you're buying into. And for people, you would never, ever go and buy a business without checking out kind of the innards of that business. Is it
Yeah.
financially sound? Is there problems with the business? Is problems with, the internal structure, the staffing, the this thing, the that thing, right? Do they, insurance issues or whatever the case may be? This is exactly the same when you look at the foundation. Like, so you buy into it. And so for things like, we talked about unit factors. You were talking about unit factors the last time. Well, unit factors are your share in the business. And
Yeah.
essentially, that's what it is, right? So when we're relating condominiums to businesses, yes, unit factors or shares, they're exactly the same thing. That's your percentage of ownership in this sucker. The other thing is, like businesses, they're required to have a meeting once per year of their shareholders. Condos, totally the same thing. That's what annual general meetings are for. Is you call all the owners, the shareholders together. They have their annual meeting to make the important decisions of that particular corporation. That's where you get, your say in what happens over the next year or couple of years in the condo. But definitely when it comes to misconceptions, here's some of the fun things that I see as like,
Yeah.
oh, condos do everything for you. Like I've even seen people go like, oh, hey, yeah, they're going to clean up my dog poop for me, right? And I'm going, oh, no, 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 hold on. Like condos do a lot of things, but cleaning up your dog poop probably isn't going to be one of
No.
them. Like I can't imagine that my neighbor paying their condo fees is going to want to have my fluffies dog poop, cleaned up. Like that just
Yeah,
doesn't compute. So
that's funny.
no, that is a hard no on the
Right.
cleaning up the dog poop. I quite often see too, like if you have a condo, let's say that there's two apartment buildings on site
Okay.
and that we've identified that one of the buildings is having some sort of issues. And let's say that there's the potential for a cash call for that to repair that issue. Sometimes what people do is go, oh, I'm okay. I'm buying in the other building. It's not going to affect me at all. No, hold on. When we're talking about condos, just because there's two different buildings on site, that doesn't mean that they're separate entities.
Right.
Usually, if they're one corporation, it's all rolled into one, and all the owners in both buildings contribute to the condo fees and whatever is happening. So, just because there's an issue in one building doesn't mean that the other folks in the other building are not going to be affected because you guys are all in it together. You're joint owners. So, that's kind of how that works. And then just like knowing where the money comes from to
Mm.
fund the condos, like there's often a misconception about that. Like we need to be clear, it doesn't money doesn't come just magically on the money tree. It doesn't come from the
Sadly.
government. It's funded
Yeah.
from the condo fees that come out of the
Right.
homeowners' pockets. That's your main revenue stream.
Yeah.
Sometimes there might be just some like a little additional things like they rent out some parking stalls for some additional revenue, or I've seen on top of some of the apartment style buildings, they might install like towers and satellite dishes and stuff, and they get a little extra
Mhm.
revenue stream from those. But that's usually a
Nice.
small drop in the bucket. It's
Right.
usually the majority is coming from your condo fees. So,
Okay.
yeah. But the one thing
Interesting.
that oh, it's so interesting. The one thing that I do want to comment on is the power in numbers. So I truly believe that many times condo owners save money on some of the necessities and the services because the condo is paying on behalf of all the owners. So if you think of things like lawn care as an example, if you're in a single
Right.
dwelling house and the guys come out and they cut your lawn for you, you better believe that you're probably going to be paying more for them to come out and cut one little single chunk of lawn than it is going to be to come out to your condo corporation and to, let's say you've got townhouses and you've got like 100 townhouses there. Well, you're probably going to get a better rate because you've got
Right.
100 little lawns versus one single little lawn. And then the same thing goes with your insurance. And sometimes you can get
Mm.
some special rates for your utilities and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Power in numbers sometimes. So sometimes there's benefit to that for sure.
Good point. Yeah, good point. Something to think of in those some of those big buildings,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
where you imagine they have big expenses, but you're right.
Mhm.
They probably also get big discounts on lots of those things as they're spending so much money.
Yeah, the interesting thing is now pay attention. Like, if you do buy into a condo, oftentimes when the budget is sent out to you on an annual basis, because all the owners are entitled to see what the budget looks like, oftentimes the management company or the board of directors will put a column on there and break down. So they'll say, okay, we're paying X amount for insurance for the entire property. And usually this includes your own structure as well, right? Um, but you'll notice in one column, it's going to say, here's what, if you break it down on a per unit portion, this is probably what your little portion works out to be. And it really helps to put things in perspective because oftentimes you'll see that and go, oh, is that what
Wow.
I'm really only paying per year? That's actually not that bad when you look at it and you put it into perspective. So,
Yeah, that's a good point too. And
yeah.
so, okay, so many condo docs in a condo package, but
Oh,
if you
yeah.
had to pick two, only two, what would you say are like the bread and butter, the two most important things that will give you the best, view of how that condo is being ran? The
Okay, I
two.
know what you're doing here, but I can't do it. I
I
honestly
know.
know, Roxanne, I cannot do it because they all have such importance in their own right. And when I'm reviewing a document, like a collection, like the whole package,
Yeah.
oftentimes I'm going back and forth between different documents and I'm overlapping stuff and I'm using every single one of them to pull out nuggets of information. Like they are all
Right.
so important. If we've got just a couple of quick minutes, I'd like to walk through some of the reasons why a lot of these documents are
Absolutely.
so important and the ones that are often forgotten and how we don't want to forget about them because they're so important.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start off with the bylaws. So the bylaws is important because that's the rules of your complex. And sometimes there can be some things in there that can affect your style of living. So for example, we had a client not too long ago, like this probably was in the last year. He was looking to buy in a condo complex. We identified that there was an age restriction, but somebody somewhere along the line had said to him, oh yeah, there's this age restriction, but they don't really, yeah, it's not important. You'll be fine, like whatever. So I pull this out and I'm like, no, no, it's important because they can enforce this. And sure enough, when he talked to the management company after I had identified this, it is still enforceable 100%.
Of course it
There's
is.
something coming down through the human rights realm, and I don't want to get into this too much, where eventually they're going to be lifting some restrictions on human rights for certain reasons. And
Yes.
that's where this one person had this misconception that everything's okay right now. You're good to go. This age restriction doesn't apply. And myself and the management company, who are experts in condos, are going, hold on, no, 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 this is still enforceable. He just about bought into a place where he couldn't have brought his family with him, his
Oh, no.
kids, and he would have been devastated. So he was so
Yeah.
grateful that we had pulled that out and saved him from that purchase because he obviously wanted to have his family with him. So that was
Yes.
hugely important. Um, Another one that we saw here within the last, I don't know, I would say a couple of years, a lady was looking to buy in a condo. She had a snake. This specific set of condo bylaws said, sorry, no, whatever the terminology, arachnids and thingamajiggers and whatever, but basically it equated to you can't have your snake there. And so that was
Wow.
hugely important because her snake was very important to her. So she said, no, I cannot buy in this place because I got to have my
Mhm.
snake with me. This is
Yep.
my pet and my family. So so bylaws are so important for many reasons and will help to flag in our reviews just some of the non-typical stuff. Like we'll cover some of the things like, don't be noisy, et cetera, et cetera. But if we see certain things like that, that could potentially affect you, definitely we're going to let you know about that kind of stuff. There's something called a condo plan. This is a sheet from land titles, tons of information on there. It's a lot of technicalities, but the one thing that I really watch for when I'm reviewing it is just to double check what your ownership shares are. And that's where that outlines that information. So there's lots of good stuff about parking and where the boundaries are for your walls and that sort of thing, and what your shares are. So that's hugely important because you need to know that information as well. There's something called a CAD sheet that can show if there's any liens or anything like that that are kind of registered against the condo. There can be some scary stuff on there. So you want to make sure that that's read, that there's nothing registered against the condo that could potentially affect the owners. So things like that. Financials, of course, everybody wants to know if they're in good financial shape. So we go through the budget, the monthly financials, the yearly financials. We go through the reserve fund study as well because we want to identify, like, are there any maintenance issues that the reserve fund planner has identified? Maybe he, saw some condensation somewhere or something called efflorescence, where it's like a white crusty structure that oftentimes can mean that there's moisture issues behind the walls. And so then they recommend getting a building expert in and inspect that. So we watch for that kind of stuff. If we see words like efflorescence or something like that, we're like, whoop, hold on,
Right.
let's flag that. That could potentially be caution, right?
Yep.
And then do they have enough money in their bank accounts to be saving up for all of these components to replace the roof when it comes due and the siding, the doors and the windows, et cetera, et cetera. So that's important. Minutes are hugely important too, because we're watching for all sorts of things. Are they talking about maintenance and are they doing things kind of in a timely manner? Are they often like pushing things off because they're like, we don't have money for it. We don't have money for it. Let's just delay. Okay, hold on. Then that's raising a little flag for me going, okay, hold on. They're delaying a lot of stuff. They seem to be really cash strapped. I think my client might want to know about this. Maybe they're just not budgeting quite enough. They don't have enough flexibility. What is going on?
Right.
So then we look at this a little bit closer. So maintenance issues, Maybe we see a lot of like noise complaints. Maybe there's just a lot
Mm,
of like really noisy people that are living
yeah,
in this particular property. And it's like, maybe we're even seeing your direct neighbors. Maybe it's
right.
unit 301 and you're looking at unit 302 and you're like, uh-oh, my neighbors have got some serious
Yeah.
problems going on. So, we'll watch for stuff like that. So there's
Okay.
every single document is hugely important in its own respect, for sure.
Right. Yeah. And there's just so many of them. You know, the average person, like I said, who's never lived
Mhm.
in a condo, they're hard to read because some of them can be very legal jargonish or the financials. How many people can understand a set of financials to the point where they know if they're making a good decision or not?
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And I find that a lot of times too, having the experience, having been in condos, having managed them, I can read into the documents a little bit more. Just because
Oh,
it says one thing, I can read into it and go, I've seen that situation before and it went sideways. Or, hey, I've seen that kind of stuff before. It's usually nothing 99.9% of the time, right? So that's where we can draw from our experience and kind of take that and offer that in our services as well. So,
right. Oh, amazing. I do think it's amazing. It's why I give your name to everyone that I know that buys a condo because I do think it's so crucial. You can't just move into a building without knowing what's going on behind it. So your
yeah.
services are just fantastic. And so I wanted to kind of end off with talking about like scary horror stories that people, hate but love. And so do you have some weird stories, people that bought in and had, you know, cash calls or just all sorts of weird things? I love hearing stories like that because it's just even more reason for everyone to be aware of what they should not do before they buy a condo.
Yeah, totally. Well, truthfully, so when the folks come to us, and the nature of our service is to divulge all this to them,
Yes,
right? To
of
dig
course.
deep, find out what the issues are, divulge it to our clients, and reveal it to them. So they go into the purchases having a good understanding of what that particular condo entails. So I wouldn't say that any of our customers would
No.
have any like scary stories per se, because they're going in with all the facts. They know what they're walking into. But some items of interest and some things that I've heard, I'll try to dig here and see what I can find. Um, Let me see. Okay, yeah, I've had some customers actually where they've purposely bought in buildings where there was significant building issues that had been identified, and then they were under the process of repairing them. And perhaps there was legal matters in the play as well, because maybe that condo association was taking the developer to court saying, hey, you didn't build our building properly. This has been a nightmare. We had to like basically rebuild half of our building,
Yeah,
and so, we want to recoup some of our costs, because us as condo owners have now had to pay out of our pockets, via cash calls or whatever, to repair this building that you didn't build properly in the first place. So I've seen this come up, and sometimes what they've done, I mean, again, so these people have consciously come to us, had the review done, and now they're consciously choosing to proceed knowing what these risks are. But
right.
sometimes what I've seen is that they do a really cool strategy and they kind of take advantage of it at a time where they're kind of like, okay, so this is still fresh and new. The repairs are just underway, or they're just completed, like newly completed. And so maybe the poor building still has a little bit of kind of a bad rap because of these issues that were identified. So
Right.
these owners might be going in and going, hey, I'm going to take advantage of this right now. I'm going to buy in when the prices are maybe a little bit lower
Mhm.
because they're just coming out of this process of repairs, et cetera, et cetera. And then maybe down the road, I might, see a little bit of extra return on my money and watch the price go up. And so sometimes they're doing that purposefully, buying into these buildings
Interesting.
with that
Yeah.
strategy in mind. So
Right.
that's kind of cool.
Smart.
Um, yeah, totally smart, right? Yeah,
Smart
no,
and
definitely.
risky. Smart and risky. It could pay off, could end up in more cash calls.
Right. Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
know. And that's where we reveal that kind of stuff. We're like, okay, it
Yeah.
hasn't been long enough to say for sure that all the issues have been corrected, and enough time for it to really let it settle and prove that there's no more leaking issues or whatever. Like sometimes you fix these things, but then you have to give it time to make sure that the issues are truly remedied. So you got to wait for those weather elements to come around in the next season or whatever, to
Right.
kind of show that everything's good. But yeah, we've had lots of customers come where they love the suite itself so much, or the home so much. They're like, I'm in love with it. It's perfect
Oh,
for me. I know that you have identified some things, with the building or with the corporation. I know some of them in there, and they're my friends, and I just want to move in so bad. And so they choose to buy in spite of knowing that there's some issues.
right.
Actually, I had an older couple that just recently, this was probably this past summer, they bought in a building, and this was really interesting. And this is something that I'm starting to see a bit more of too, is that the insurance industry had said, we're not funding flood coverage for this building because they're in a flood zone. They live close to a
Oh,
river,
okay.
and they're at risk of flooding. And so the insurance company says, we don't want to have anything with that. So we're not going to give you guys flood coverage. If you have a flood, sorry, you're on your own. So I had to let these people know this. If you're buying into this building, this is hugely important. Have some money put aside, because if that river raises and it floods some of your condo,
Yeah.
then you guys are going to have to pay out of pocket collectively as all the owners to repair those damages, because the insurance company is not going to cover this. And they looked at it and they went, okay. And again, they're the people that, we love the suite. We've got friends in the building.
Yeah.
That's okay. We'll put money aside. Now we know we're buying anyways.
Right.
So that was kind of that situation. And then I have one
Yeah.
other one, and I'll end off on this one. This is my own personal story that I'm going to tell
Ooh,
you.
okay.
This is the whole reason why I got into this business in the first place. This is the history, the true kind of nuts and bolts behind it. So
Great.
this is before I got into condominium management and know what I know now about condos. So I was a young little thing back then, and I'm thinking, the man and I were like, hey, let's go out and let's buy some, rental properties, and we're going to buy a couple of places. Maybe one day it will help fund our retirement. And so we go out, and it's in the boom period. This was back in like 2007, 2008, Roxann, when things were like
Yeah,
hot tamales. There
you
was
bet.
us and literally about 5 other people lined up in the lobby, all to go to see this very same suite. They had multiple offers going in on this sucker. It was crazy. But we managed to be the ones that to get chosen. We had the most
Okay.
attractive offers. So we're like, woohoo, yay for
Yeah.
us. And at that time, of course, it wasn't as, I wouldn't say it wasn't as, the importance of having the documents looked at wasn't as stressed back then as it is
Yeah.
now. Because now that we know how important all the documents are, the government says, you people, you need to be doing this. If buyers, please, have these documents checked out. It wasn't as stressed back then. And so we were just kind of given some tips from some folks that lived in the building. It's a lovely building. Oh, we're so happy here. We feel it's well run. But again, keep in mind, these are not condo professionals.
Of
Hey,
course.
awesome. Good enough for us. We've got multiple, offers coming in behind us. We got to keep moving, because if we don't take this place, somebody in behind us is going to scoop it up. So bought the building. And it wasn't long after that I got the job in a condominium office. And then I started getting my education and my training and everything. And it wasn't long after. And I'm going, hold the phone. I need to take a look at the documents for that one condo that we just bought. I'm kind of suspecting it's not as good as we thought it was. So I start looking at things and I'm like, oh, rats. Okay, we got ourselves an issue here. Their budget is so lean and the condo fees are so lean that they're not properly funding the reserve fund. They've been purposefully not doing a lot of projects and maintenance stuff and delaying things because they just don't have the money. They're trying to keep condo fees low, and bless their hearts for doing that. But as a
Absolutely.
result, now we don't have enough money in the reserve fund. So when the time comes to do the roof or the windows or the doors or some of those major projects, we're not going to
Yeah.
have enough money. We're going to have to do cash calls for that. And honestly, like, if people start to become wise to this, that could start to affect our sales and our prices of our units. Oh, rats. Okay. So it took a few years, and, working with the condo board and stuff, we made sure that we got some representation from our own household on the condo board and went from there. Working with the management company and everything, we kind of changed management companies, got a really good management company in place. It took a few years. It was a little painful. Yes, there was a couple of cash calls, but now the building is in fantastic
Wow.
condition. Financials look, top notch, but it did it took a little bit to get there. And yes, we did have to play a little bit of catch up, but that was the whole reason why I decided, after working with the management companies and stuff and then going through that myself, I was like, I need to start this business, giving back to people and showing them how important it is, to make sure things are properly checked out before they buy.
Oh, that is great info, Carissa. Thanks for sharing that with us. Like you said, knowledge is half the battle.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need all that info up front to make an informed decision. So thanks so much for sharing all of your stories and your knowledge with us. For those of you that are listening, I am going to include Carissa's contact info in the podcast information so that if you want to reach out to her, if you're thinking of buying something right now, I strongly encourage you to have her review those documents before you make any decisions. Thanks so much for joining us, Carissa. It was so nice to see you. And thanks again for sharing.
Oh, thanks, Roxann. Really appreciate being here. And it's so great to
Yeah,
see
of
you
course. I
again.
know you too. Take care. I'm sure we'll be chatting soon.
Sounds good.
See you.